Welcome to the Blind Apex Podcast, where amateur club racers tune in to get faster.
I'm your host, Con John Turk, and on this episode, we talk about sim racing. College-age Con is super jealous of my guest, making a living off of really fancy race car video games, an owner of multiple E30s, a recent spinner of bearings, managing director of SimSeats. Welcome, Zach McAfee.
Man, I didn't know I was going to get a gut punch already. Jeez.
Oh, come on.
Too soon, man.
No, it's the gut punch is best fresh. Had I known Sunday, I would have trolled you on Sunday. It would have been fine.
Well, man, I can take it because you got to own up to your spun bearings, you know?
Well, and the guys
If you
you
don't
paddock with, they got to give it to you.
Yeah. I'm sitting right next to it, actually. It's I tore it down and 2 days after the event and found it, and I'm now just crying over it a little bit and crying over the less money in my bank account because I already found another LS1, and we're going to keep on rolling.
Okay. You're not going to repair is it beyond repair or not worth repairing?
Let me put it this way. I repaired this one.
Okay. That's
so
fair.
I'm done repairing.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Yes.
So, obviously you spun a bearing at the track. Let's give everybody your background in racing for us.
Sure.
You know,
It's been my life more or less. I was dragged to the track as a spectator when I was really wee one, but when I was about 13, my dad got me into kart racing, and so that's more or less where it all started. So I did competitive kart racing for years, and once I got up into the college days, so I did it that long, starting 13 up until I was 21. I was competitively racing in what's called the Virginia Dirt Karting Association, and ran in the state series, and that kind of spilled into other states, and we did money races, and we did turkey races, and we were racing every weekend, literally. And it started February, and then it ended in November, and we were every weekend on track. So that was my childhood.
Okay.
And I loved it. It got me out of a space when I was a kid where I probably could have turned into a brat and maybe a bad person when I was an adult, and it gave me something to focus on.
Yeah.
And it was totally consuming. Nothing else could distract me or bother me from working on the karts all week, racing on Saturday, all day through the night, and then clean it back up on Sunday and repeat. So that was my life growing up, and that's how I got into racing, was doing that. Once I got into college, I made a decision, long story short, to stop kart racing because it took so much time, and it was getting to the point where I was bringing my college work to the track to try to get some of it done at any bit of time that I had, even on Saturday between practice runs or qualifying or whatever.
Yeah.
I said, well, maybe that's enough. Maybe I'm not going to be a NASCAR driver, but maybe I could be an engineer, and that's cool. So let's do that. And so that's the path I took, and I got out of competitive racing, and then hit it hard at school, and kind of played around with autocrossing a little bit, stuff like that, to sort of fill in the gaps. But Gran Turismo 4 helped a lot during this period where I had not a lot of driving to do in the real world, but I was sort of getting that out, on PlayStation, sort of getting the same vibes, getting that same feeling of driving a car or something, anything. I don't care what it is, driving something on track at speed. That's kind of my outlet. That's what it became, instead of doing the real thing. So I had this kind of lull in between competitive racing for almost a decade to what am I doing now? I don't really have enough money to drive a car competitively or on track at all. And I didn't really know much about road racing yet. So I was getting into sim racing. Before getting into sim racing was a phrase. This was 2004-ish, right? Um,
Hmm.
I graduated in 2004, so it was before that. And I started realizing it would be cool if this wheel and pedals that you can buy at Best Buy or Circuit City. How about that one?
Yeah,
The
Virginia boys talking now.
That's
I'm
right.
about it.
What if you had a proper thing to bolt this to? Not a desk, not the pedal sit on the floor, but like something to put it
Right.
on. And believe it or not, I had to double check it today. I was like, did that not exist back then? Because surely, like everything always exists all the time, right? If you think of an idea, it's already out there. But the entire industry of simulators was developing at that point. There was definitely examples of things that you can find that were a chassis or a simulator or something, but the industry as we know it now started about that time period. In fact,
Yeah.
Playseat, which is one of the biggest simulator manufacturers, they Fernando Smith is the CEO. He started it mid 2000s, so it's about the same time period, which is really interesting.
Right.
So you don't just go get on Amazon in 2005 and buy a driving simulator. It's not at Best Buy. So I'm having to figure
Mm.
this out on my own. And so I built it. I like welding. I like doing metal work, and I just made one. And I actually made it at the sculpture building at VCU. There was an entire pile of scrap metal in the parking lot, and then they had welders and cutting tools and whatever you need, and they let you make whatever you want if you're going taking one of their classes. And so I got a seat from a junkyard RX-7, and I welded up myself a driving simulator frame, and I took it home, and I just had a freaking
Hmm.
blast with it, and it just felt right, And now we're talking. This is serious stuff. Um, and I made one. That one I took to my dad's, and he was like, "Well, this is great. How about you make yourself one? Because I'm keeping it." So I made another
He
one.
would.
Right.
Yeah.
So I made another one, and this whole thing sort of turned into me making a couple of simulators to let me put it on eBay and see if people actually want to buy these things. And man, let me tell
Hmm.
you, the moment I put one on eBay, it sold, and I put another one and it sold, and then all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, geez, I got a backlog, and I don't even have a company yet." And that was
Right.
that was that was 2009 when I started doing that, putting them on eBay and see what would happen. And
Okay.
it's kind of like hopping on the bull, and they open up the gates, and the thing freaking took off, and all I was doing was hanging on.
Well, you held on pretty well, I think. So I I remember that time. So I didn't graduate much earlier than you. I graduated in 2002. I think I was the world's best Gran Turismo time waster, at least in college. If I needed an excuse to procrastinate, I was trying to earn credits in Gran Turismo so I could go through whatever cup it was, right?
Absolutely.
Um, I remember those days because I was the Gran Turismo nerd, and my roommate in college, he bought a desk from Best Buy. He had to travel to Best Buy because at the time Harrisonburg didn't have one. We only had a Circuit City, but he went to a Best Buy in his hometown, because he was in the flight simulators, and this desk was designed to be used with flight simulators. So he had his screen up, and his back then we didn't have laptops really, so there were CPUs tucked up underneath there, and it just had enough space, and it was sort of like all around you. But here I am playing with these stupid sticks and buttons, trying to and in the controller, just trying to do this. I don't even think I saw, because Harrisonburg did have a Circuit City. I never saw any of the steering wheels and stuff, but that probably would have landed me in a very slippery slope that I already had a problem with anyway.
There was
So
probably like one box with a steering wheel in it about that time. You know what I mean? It just wasn't a thing.
probably. Yeah.
and there's nowhere to put it, why would you keep it in stock? And so you get really good at the little joystick thing on the controller. Talk about
Yeah.
precision.
That was me. If you went and looked at the replays, the tires are twitching like this because my thumb is just trying to minutely move things and stuff. It was the good old days, let's call it.
If only we could do that in real life.
But yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't. I barely move my hands in the car as is. So I see a lot of videos where there's guys like really tweaking the wheel all the time, and that's not how I drive. But yeah, but we've come a long way, right? The world is our oyster now. Amazon can get you anything in a couple days maximum, right? So there's all these do-it-yourself setups. I know plenty of guys that have whatever Logitech this or Race Pack or whatever they are called, steering wheels, different pedals, different gearbox setups, and they make their own, right? They go to, I don't know if they can afford it anymore because lumber's still pretty high, but they, bolt a whole bunch of 2x4s together. They pull an old seat out of a car like you did, or they have an old race seat. Most of our listeners are racers, and they've got an expired seat, and they're like, well, what better excuse than to just throw it into a sim, right? Oh, I have an expired seat, honey. I have to do something with it. Nobody wanted to buy it. Nobody wants to buy it. I'll make a sim racer out of it. No, it's really cheap, I swear. So we can do everything ourselves. There's gaming PCs you can buy straight off, Alienware, and even Dell has a offshoot of Alienware that's rebranded to Dell, and HP's got gaming labeled laptops and all these things. So literally the world's our oyster.
And it's
my big thing is,
and so all that kind of started becoming apparent around, I would say 2010, 2011, when all those pieces you just described started happening on their own. So steering wheel started getting more popular and slightly better, but not really great at the time. Gaming's always been gaming, but really high powered PCs are readily available. You can get online and build your own. All these pieces that would make you say, oh yeah, I could build one of these things, started happening around like the 2010, 2011 time period, I would say, from my perspective.
Okay.
So you're right. You can build one on your own. And that was the only option back then. And that's where I think you were getting at, was DIY versus getting one done, like in your house, ready to go, right? It wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
It really wasn't a thing until, from my personal experience, I was at VI. I brought a sim that I fabricated a bunch of them, actually. A lot of people helped me do this. And we rented a garage and we set up a bunch of sims in there. Some of them were on Gran Turismo. One of them was on iRacing, because by then I had saved up enough money with the company to buy a computer. It was like, wow, this is a huge deal. I have a computer now. So I can do iRacing, which was just getting going really too at the same time. And we set this all up just for people to have fun. That's the only reason I did it. And then thinking maybe I could sell a chassis, right? Or I could sell a monitor stand or something like that. Kind of low goal stuff. Like, hey, instead of buying a play seat, buy one of my things. And somebody walked up and said, well, I had this SimSeat, old school SimSeat now, and a monitor stand with 3 monitors on it, set up for iRacing, had like Logitech steering wheel pedals on it. And everybody's driving it. And while somebody was driving it, a person walks up to me and says, well, how much is all of this? And I was like, well, I don't know, man. I don't sell all of this. Like, I went to Best Buy or whatever and bought all the electronics, and what I sell is the chassis.
Right. And
he was like, well, how much would all this cost? And so I threw a number out at him, and he was like, oh, well, that's not too bad. And then he walks off, and I was like, well, geez, I told him like a couple grand, and he thought it was not a big deal. And then that's when I started learning that it took me a lot of effort to make that first setup work. Like the first time I made an iRacing setup work and get triple screens working and find the right components, it was a lot of effort and not impossible by any means. And I'm not saying don't do it. Like it's even easier now than it was before. But at the time, I was like, man, I got all this time invested in figuring out how to do this, and I'm happy to do it because like I like messing around with electronics a little bit and computers and stuff. So like I'm happy to do it. What about the guy that does not want have anything to do with figuring out a computer or figuring out what monitors to buy or calibrating it or anything like that? He just wants to have it because he wants to go iRacing. And that was boom. Oh, that's
Right.
what the industry, there are people that want that. And that's basically where the industry went. So that was 10 years ago or so. And now turnkey is a industry phrase. It means a simulator that's ready to go. It's not like when you go to the way I describe it is when you go to a dealership to buy a car, they don't tell you, well, you can also go to the parts department if you want and buy all the parts to build your Honda Civic. They don't tell you that. They say, we have these cars here that you can buy, right? Well, that's kind of where the industry is right now for simulators. It's like everybody's been building cars from parts the entire time the simulator industry existed. Now we're at the point where buying it all ready to go is an option. And so, if you think about, well, what should I do, right? Like, should I build my own, figure it out? Should I get somebody else to do it for me?
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's whatever you are more comfortable with. Are you comfortable tackling, buying your own PC, know what specs to get? Are you familiar with monitor specs? Do you like building stuff? Are you a hands-on person? If that's the case, then do it. Yeah, buy all the parts and you'll save some money buying all the individual pieces. But you got to build it yourself. You might buy something over again, kind of standard stuff. Like if you build your own race car, you never do it right the first time. I've had my E30
Shenanigans.
since 2008. I'm still trying to figure out how to build this stupid thing.
Well, we have lots of templates in the Honda game. I don't know what you E30 guys are doing, but should be pretty easy. I mean, yours is LS swapped, so that's a whole
BMW
different
guys.
ballgame,
We're pretentious, so we don't talk to anybody. We can do it on our own. You Honda guys are like a village.
That's the
like
struggle.
A community.
We are, yeah. We drink together. We race together. We have all our shenanigans together, and then enough adult beverages flow, and all the secrets come out. So
yep. I'm familiar with that concept.
So the real difference in because the do-it-yourself in 2023, there's lots of chassis out there in various price ranges, right? You can get the $100 and $200 tube, really janky tube stuff from Amazon. You can get I don't even know what your basic chassis setup is from you, but yours is very intricate. I've seen it. It's very adjustable. Whereas you're adding adjustability the higher you go in your chassis, right? So you can set your monitors where you want, adjust your seats, sort of move the steering wheel pedal box around more, those types of things.
Yeah, and that's right. That's all spot on. You can also, like, SimSeats does a lot of turnkey, but you can buy all the components and do it yourself using SimSeats stuff. So like a SimSeats chassis, if you just focus on that compared to the other chassis, obviously I'm biased for whatever I say because I started SimSeats, so I like my stuff the best. But I'll try to provide perspective from a lot of the people I work with. So I know what stuff is made out there, stuff that's $200. And I know what some of the nicer stuff is made of and feels like that is about the same price range as a SimSeat. And then I know what real race car drivers, their perspective is on all of this. So I'll try to share it that way instead of just what I think about our product. You definitely get what you pay for. I think is very true in this case. Does that matter? Well, that's up to you. If you're thinking about trying sim racing and it might last 3 months, you're not sure if you're really invested into it. You can certainly, in a disposable economy, go buy a $200 piece of crap and set it up, and it'll be a little flimsy or whatever, and the ergo is not going to be right, but it holds your wheel and pedals and it gets the job done. That might be good enough. You want to test the waters.
Right.
You move past that and you get into some stuff that is more expensive, closer to the $1,000 range, which is where our chassis is. And then depending on how you equip it with what pedal attachment you need, the design can get more intricate. Then it might be a bit more expensive. But in that range, you have primarily right now extruded aluminum chassis. So you may have heard them as called 80/20. It's aluminum channel. It's slotted so it fits T-nuts inside, and it's just like aluminum bar basically that is cut to length to assemble a DIY chassis, and there's little brackets that kind of put it all together. That is really popular right now. They are good they're like a lot better than that cheap $200 whatever you typically find on Amazon, but
Right.
and they definitely do the job better, and there's a lot of adjustment in them. That's something to look at. What I have found with those types of chassis is that they, compared to ours, the ergo is not correct. So all the adjustability, like you said, is there because now we've gotten to a little bit more expensive rig. It's got a lot of adjustment in it based on that slot design. But there's the channel is so bulky, and because it is kind of like an erector set, it can be put together in a lot of different ways because it's sliding, but it's not the same thing as a dedicated chassis. So a tube frame chassis that is entirely focused on ergo, which is what we do. And also we do it in steel because weight doesn't matter. You don't need to save weight in the sim. Arguably you want it to be heavier so it doesn't move. And so all that says you should do it in steel. It should be heavy gauge material that doesn't flex. If you can build a triangulated tube frame setup that is dedicated to figuring out exactly where everything should be based on real cars, then that is the next level beyond that, which is where we are. And that's feedback that was my design perspective while we were making the current generation of the SRX. But that's feedback I've gotten from other people. I work a lot with a NASCAR driver named Anthony Alfredo. He was first a customer, and he became a huge advocate for us because he realized, in his opinion and from his perspective, being a big sim racer himself, that there's nothing like the ergo from this particular chassis. You just can't beat it. And so that's kind of the difference, and that's where we are, is that we're trying to nail that down and get it perfect. And for a GT style seating position, we think we're there. There's always, like, every car is different. Like, you're a track guy and you've driven lots of cars, so every car you get in feels different. So there is no perfect setup. This one's pretty damn close. And so that's where we are on our chassis compared to other stuff. And it's really important to me too to get that ergo right, because if you are training on something that doesn't feel right, what do you think is going to happen when you get in a car and everything you've been doing is in something that is not, that you've kind of adapted to, but isn't exactly what it should be?
Yeah, it'll make a hard translation. So all those hours you put in is just going to be that much more difficult to relate to the car you're driving. Right. I'm spoiled because you brought a couple of rigs to a party that we were all at, and it's the only sim racing I've done. Okay. So I've only raced in the good rigs. I've never been in a do-it-yourself, so I'm a little spoiled already.
Whoa. Well, a
little tainted.
You grew up on Gran Turismo. You are a sim racer through and through.
No, joystick is not. It's not the same. And I'll tell you what, there's no way that $200 rig is going to stand up to what went through that evening, because there was a butt in one of those seats for, when I left, there was still a line. Like it was person after person after person getting in, trying to hit Summit Point, trying to hit VIR. People were getting a little crazy. I don't know if your pedals and stuff survived, because there were some folks that were a little inebriated in there, and there were people who were a lot inebriated in there, all trying to hit things. And God bless your brake pedals.
Hey, this is a time for a commercial break, because that was Logitech donated brand new direct drive setup that they sent to us for demonstration. So there's your sponsor moment.
Yeah, that was a really nice setup. I don't know what it would take to duplicate that, but that was a really nice setup. I appreciated driving on it. Even though the wheel snatch it, the computer would snatch the wheel right out of your hands when you made a mistake sometimes. But yeah, it was a great setup. My recommendation, especially in general, we need cup holders, and because you had open top computers, and people were trying to set their drinks down on the open top computer. I'm like, no. Not there. There's not a piece of glass.
I've seen it all. And that's right. We really did need cup holders in that situation. I actually started, when we first started making Sims, I was looking for an outlet for accessories to sell. And we started making cup holders, and all it was a piece of 3-inch exhaust tube welded to a little plate with a hole in it, and then you could bolt it on your wheel deck, and now you had a cup holder.
Whatever works, man.
Priorities.
Going down the back straight at VIR, I needed a drink, but I couldn't reach it. So,
well, that's the great thing about sim racing, is drinking and driving is allowed.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of that going on at that party. So, but just, in the Sims. But yeah, so what I'm trying to, because the do it yourself, you can learn a lot. Somebody like me who doesn't really sim race, because I don't anymore. I haven't touched anything outside of your rig in forever. I don't have the internet for it, generally speaking. What is the benefit, let's say, from a do-it-yourself, not so ergonomically perfect? What can you learn on a DIY or DIY? And then when you graduate to that higher end rig that more matches your vehicle, that you can tune your pedals and your steering wheel to your own vehicle, what changes in your learning process?
Well, I would say that there is nothing wrong if you want to get a simulator and you're using it to practice. I'm not saying don't get the entry level and budget minded stuff, even though it's not exactly right, because the reality is it will never be exactly right, and it will never reproduce being on track. It will never reproduce real track time. If you want to listen to this podcast in 300 years and be like, yep, our technology showed that guy, I'm not going to be around then anyways. So I'm okay with saying that right now.
Who cares?
You will not replace track time with this device. So let's start there. But you can't get track time all the time. And that's when a simulator is really handy, is because I've got a spare 30 minutes because I finished work and it's not time to cook dinner yet. I'm going to go throw some laps down. I can hop in the sim and I can go. And no matter what sim you get in, what simulator chassis you're sitting in, you're getting on iRacing, which is what we tend to use almost 100% of the time at SimSeats. You're getting in iRacing and you're going onto a well-reproduced graphical model of the real track. And you are practicing your visual cues and your timing and working on some of that muscle memory of braking points and turn-in points and that sort of stuff. It's great for that. And even though your chassis might not be the exact ergo. Well, guess what? You're not driving your car on iRacing anyways, even if it is the exact same car. Yeah, not yours
Definitely
and
not
not
mine.
mine, that's for sure. I haven't found an
Right.
LSE30 on there. I don't see a stock E92 M3 on there, right? It's just, and that's okay. And the funny thing is,
Right. Right.
I've worked with a lot of pro racers, and um, one um, one particular scenario that is really vivid in my mind and is like spot on with what we're just talking about now with how well it relates is I was William Byron's a Cup Series driver in NASCAR, and he's one of my customers. Max Pappas is his
Mhm.
driver trainer, so I work with Max a lot to try to build and design and tune a simulator for William that best provided the training equipment that he needed that would translate well to him in the Cup car, because he was actually having some issues in the Cup car based on
Right.
the simulator activity, particularly around pedal pressure, applying pedal pressure. He wasn't applying enough. And so I worked with Max, and we tried to
Okay.
come up with a sim that would work well for him. And it was a really cool setup. Long story short, I'm sitting there in an afternoon driving. Max is driving cars over and over and over again in iRacing. And he's going, this is not what it feels like in a Cup car. This is wrong. This is not right. I should be able to, it shouldn't do this. It shouldn't do that. And he's kind of like criticizing me while I'm standing there about his experience. And what it came down to was we found another car in iRacing that was not the car that William was driving at the time or that Max had experience in, that
Mhm.
was a better simulator experience than the one that they were supposed to be driving. So like, Williams driving a next gen Cup car. Well, in the simulator it didn't feel right. So we found something that did feel right, and that's the
Right.
point. Just find something that feels right in iRacing and then go do it and just get as close as you can and don't even worry about what it is. So if
Okay.
you drive a Honda Civic, you drive a Civic, there's a Civic there
Yep.
in iRacing,
Yep.
but um, maybe the TDI Jetta feels closer to your Civic in iRacing. It doesn't matter what it is.
TDIs don't spin to 9,000. We don't drive those things.
Okay, calm down. So okay, put your pride to the side and just listen to me for a second. I'm the expert here. That's why I'm on the podcast.
Yes.
But to me,
Whatever you say, boss.
to me, it's like just find something that's close enough. And actually, to your point, you're going TDI Jetta, give me a break. The red line of that thing's 1,200 RPMs or something. Like, it's not even close. For us, me and Max, what we found was some old series below Cup car that like it shouldn't have been right, but it was right. Right. So it's just
Okay.
trying to find something that gives you a better experience. So I think my whole point is kind of wrapping back around to you got the cheap rig. That's fine. Just try to get stuff that as close as possible that you can when you're building your own setup and you're driving cars to be as close to what you feel like your experience is on track. Because I can't reproduce your experience, but you probably have a lot better chance of reproducing your own experience on track yourself.
Yeah. But another couple things that I think folks go to sim racing to learn is racecraft. So they get on the live leagues and try to figure out how to pass. And that ties into how to pass at the tracks that they're going to. So they like to go to a track and just learn the flow.
Mhm.
So I know there were folks that were talking about where can I find Pit Race? I think it's in Assetto Corsa, maybe.
Yeah.
Somebody's got
Mhm.
Pit Race. So there's guys going to nationals this year who are switching software. They're moving
Yeah.
from iRacing because iRacing didn't have it, and now they're trying to figure out, tweak their rigs again, learn things, and then just so they can learn pit. I'm sure they're going to pit. I have no doubt they're going to pit before nationals to drive it for real. But in the meantime, they want to learn the track. And then newer racers will try to use sim racing to learn racecraft. And I think that's two things that translate between a DIY rig and a nicer rig. But the immersion that you can get, I think we were driving an Audi or something at the party. It was like an Audi GT3 car or something.
Yeah, maybe.
And outside of its blinding speed, it felt really good to drive. But I also was sitting in a seat and everything was set up so it felt more like my own cockpit, where if I bolted something to my desk, it's no better than me playing with a controller probably. So
man,
just a couple things.
That's not a couple things. There's so much we could do. We need to do another podcast to unpack everything you just said.
I mean, we can't tonight, but I mean, anytime you want to come on, that's fine.
Well, there's a couple things that you dropped in there. It's relating. So trying to learn a new track on the simulator. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Park that one. What if a track's not on iRacing? It's a problem. And we have pro drivers that have our setups that are strictly using it for training that they have to figure out. That's a problem. Right. Park that somewhere. Side-by-side racing. There's a million things to unpack out of that. And there's a lot of great things Absolutely. You can do in iRacing there. There's a lot to talk about how to do that and some advantages. Where do we want to start? Which one do we want to unpack the most? You're in charge here.
Yeah, let's start with side-by-side racing.
Okay.
Learning a little racecraft while you're out there. Because there's no damage. Well, they smack your hand in lobbies and stuff, but they don't.
It's even better than that.
You're not paying for a busted car.
That's right. And yeah, the heartbreak is a lot less than it is in the real world. And you don't have to meet with the race director afterwards, right? Doesn't matter.
Right.
So
no Jeff Hall meetings here.
So that's great. And it's even better. You can do it in AI on iRacing to practice racecraft. And man, you can stack the field with a crap ton of cars and go to whatever track you're familiar with. No, they don't have AI on every track in iRacing. It's sort of a thing that they have to tune, and that they're unleashing it for different tracks and different cars over time. But God, is that a blast? And it's all about learning and getting that feel for how to negotiate traffic and how to behave in a pack, and where right. you need to restrain and where you can gain. Like, trying to figure that out in real life, you will almost always be too conservative, or you're the asshole that wrecked into me, right? But what if you get into AI on iRacing, which is AI on iRacing is, just to explain it, is a offline mode where you say, I want this many cars on track with me at this track in this car, and all those other cars are at a strength level range of 50% to 75%. I want to start the race in this X position. I want to be mid-pack. I want to be back of the pack. I want to be the front of the pack. And just like I said, unpacking this idea is huge, because think of all the things that you could practice learning. Like, you want to practice defending yourself? Well, then put the pack at 95% and start on the front and practice defending.
Right.
Or do you want to practice restarts? Well, put yourself in the mid-pack and put them all about the same strength level and see how you do getting into turn one. Or do you want to negotiate traffic, start in the back of the pack, and see how far to the front you can get in 4 laps, and just keep doing it over and over and over and over again? And that is scenario-based repetitive training. And if you get really serious about sim racing as a training tool, then do that kind of stuff. And that will teach you some really good techniques for side-by-side racing. you have to think about then your equipment level will affect your experience and how well that training works. If you have a single monitor,
Hmm.
then you're solely focusing on what's in front of you and timing of what's behind you because you don't have peripheral vision. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Right. No, it does.
you pass somebody when they leave your single monitor, you are mentally timing, engaging when you will be past them and clear. I mean, there's a spotter in iRacing, so that helps. But I mean, it's kind of the same thing you do anyways in the car. Like if you have moments where you're not sure where somebody is, it's because you lost track of them timing wise or visually. You're practicing all that
Yep.
stuff really hardcore with a single monitor setup. If you have something like a triple monitor, we do a lot of triple 32-inch monitor setups where it's basically 180 degrees view, which is if you're in a Hans and you can't turn your head a whole bunch, that's about what you got. And then you're using your mirrors for the rest. So that's pretty accurate.
Right.
So your equipment at that point starts getting more critical in terms of your experience in the sim and your training experience.
Okay. Yeah, so that actually answers a lot for me as far as like that transition from DIY to a sim, like a sim seat style setup. There's definitely a line that you draw, right? I would assume in a regular DIY, you could learn the racetrack. You could use sim racing as a way to learn the flow of a racetrack. Unlike, I mean, you could do it in both rigs, but there's folks that are. I hear it a lot because I don't do it. I'm actually happy to hear that iRacing has AI because I don't have the internet to do the leagues and stuff and race with actual folks. So it seems like an option to actually do that. But the do you guys do a lot of virtual reality headset setups?
Yeah,
Also?
when Oculus came out way back with their development kits, I got the first version of it. We were playing around with it. At the time, you had to have these like sensors that you had to mount somewhere. So we made mounts. We made mounts to put the sensors up in front to see you and created your space. Well, it's so much more refined now. It's all in the headset. They're great, and people that like them, they say forget triple monitors. But it's not as clean cut as that. There are pros and cons. People that like triple monitors, they don't like VR. They kind of are more comfortable with that. So you got to sort of figure out, well, what's the difference? There isn't one that's hyper dominating at this point. And so you can look at the pros and cons to sort of figure out what sounds better to you when it comes to picking a VR headset versus let's say a triple monitor setup would be the most comparable setup. A VR headset setup, just to sort of break it down what it is, you buy the headset, you still need a monitor to run Windows and just kind of general operational stuff, get the race set up, whatever. Once you drop into the sim and you're in a session, you put the VR headset in, man, you are in the car. It is cool. Like you are sitting there on the paddock, just like we do, me and you do in real life, and you look around and you're just kind of waiting for Candy to let us out on track. And you're just kind of looking around inside your car and you see everything and it's all there. And it's really neat to experience that in VIR to get that feeling of everything up close looks really good, really accurate, and you can see it all. What I've noticed is once you get out on track, things that are further away are a bit fuzzy. So there's like a distance rendering issue. Has a lot to do with resolution, computing power, all that sort of stuff. That to me, real racing or driving, not even necessarily racing, but just high performance driving, one of the biggest things we talk about early on is eyes up, look through the corner, right? So you're looking way down the track.
Right.
Well, it just so happens that the stuff far away is harder to see in VR. And I've got a little bit of an issue with that. That's my personal preference. But um, in terms of all of the positives, a lot of people say that's okay. I'm
Mhm.
fine with that. I like the ability to turn my head and see the guy next to me rather than looking at a screen and the immersion. So I think that's the big deal with VIR is not VIR. VR is immersion. Uh, but if you have a headset on, where's your shifter? Is it the shifter that's in your headset, or is it the shifter that's on your rig that you can't see from your face being covered with the headset? So
Right.
that kind of translate that also becomes an issue when it comes to buttons on the steering wheel, your actual steering wheel, knobs and things that you might use to make pit adjustments and all this sort of stuff on your actual rig. They are not visible when you have a headset on. There's tricks to get around that. You know, you can kind of maybe look up and see down underneath. Um, so I think some people have figured out easy ways to get around that, but just something to keep in mind that that's an issue when it comes to VIR. Or VR. Jesus, I'm going to say VIR every time.
Maybe. Yeah. But you drive Virginia International Raceway too
I
often,
guess.
apparently. But I swear that I never look at my shifter, but it's in my peripheral, so it's always there.
That-
You know,
That's
we're
a good
not
point.
blind, so we can see and
You
shift.
shouldn't be looking at it. You should know where it is.
You know, I, I should know where it is, but when my hand goes to reach it, it's still in my vision to
Hmm.
go get it. Well, with the VR, it
Right.
won't be. So I know where it is in my car. I still think there's some visual cues that I'm not
Right.
fessing up to, because I swear I don't look for it. It's not like I swear I'm looking ahead, but I still know, hey, that my shift knob is, down and to the right at a certain area, and I know what gear I'm in. And
I mean,
those
to
kinds
your
of things.
point, I just took the LSE30 out and I'm doing a shakedown after 2 years of not driving it, and this transmission is a real pain in the ass. And I sometimes I can't get the thing to go into gear. It kind of finds these like middle spaces in between the slot of a gear, just really annoying.
Right.
And I was hitting that a lot because I just wasn't comfortable driving the car again. It's been so long. But you know what I wasn't doing while I'm on track at speed is like looking down at my shifter to see where it is. So it's to your point, it's almost
Yeah,
irrelevant. Maybe it's a annoyance more than anything else. Yeah,
it could be. I that's sad. You were shaking the car down and you saw the
I
bearing.
told you, I just built this engine. It's not the first engine I've built. If I can give myself a little bit of credit, I've built a lot of stuff. I built a lot of rotary engines, even. Um, for you Toyota fans,
Oh, you got all
man,
your
everything's great.
fingers.
No apex seal's broken. Everybody's happy. I've for you Toyota fans, a
Okay.
22 RE. I rebuilt one of those. I've done a Chevy 350. Like I feel like I've got a pretty good resume for engine builds. I had not tackled an LS yet. I think there might be something in a name. My dad built himself a really nice motor a couple of years ago, and it blew up in catastrophic form on the
Hmm.
back straight of VIR and caught his C5 on fire when it unloaded oil everywhere onto
Oh,
the headers and all that stuff. And so let me tell you, I was
yeah.
getting ready for that at Summit this past weekend. I was just waiting for my engine to
Fire
explode.
system installed.
Dude, I honestly was gonna call Mark and say, "Hey, man, I know I just hit you up for a fire system for my Spec E30, but I'm gonna need another one because I built myself a motor." It ended up just being a rod knob,
Yeah.
so I'm happy that I'm still here without third degree burns. But what are you gonna do?
You didn't window your block, self-ventilate. So that's
No,
all
I
right.
kept all the
That's
parts
good.
inside.
It's still salvageable.
Yeah, I'm moving on, man.
So, can we talk a little bit about the differences in software? So you do specifically iRacing. What are the pros and cons of iRacing to you?
So yeah, you had mentioned that that kind of was one of the other things to unpack with what you're talking about when it comes to more regional tracks or ones that simply iRacing hasn't gotten to.
Right.
And to kind of hit that a little bit, just from an understanding perspective, it iRacing does a great job. They of developing tracks in iRacing because they actually go there. They scan the tracks. They have really cool equipment that gives you a 3D model of the entire track surface. It takes a lot of time to do that. And that kind of stuff translates really well because, within our current capabilities of 3D modeling and computing, that the track is the same as what you would go to if you were there in real life. That's great to know. Also, if you have a motion system, which we do, there's a bunch of people do motion systems, the bumps and stuff, they all translate because the 3D modeling is the same. So that's all really cool. The problem is it costs them a lot of money to do that, to get out there, to spend the however much time it takes to do that, to come back, to turn that into a 3D model, to do all the surrounding bits and make sure that they're accurate. I mean, there's even sponsors that have a name on the the bridge or whatever going across the track. They got to get that right. There's even conversations about if those people should be paying for the space in iRacing, meta stuff,
Yeah.
So there's a lot. And anyways, there's a lot involved. And the reason I wanted to bring that up to start is that's why not everything is on iRacing, right? They spend a lot of time doing it, and they have to look at it from a business perspective and say, all right, if I put all this money into it, whatever it is, $500,000 or something, who knows? And then I'm selling them as licenses to use this track at $15 a pop. Well, that's got to cost justify, right? That's how you run a business. So I've heard, because I'm not very good at it. So apparently that's how you do it. So the alternative is people modeling without that level of intricacy. And then you get into things like rFactor or Assetto Corsa, where they are modeled based on things like Google Earth, satellite images, stuff like that. Maybe other ways I'm not aware of, but they're doing them in different ways, and some crowdsourcing stuff too going on there. Especially for really small tracks that nobody's ever been to. Well, not nobody's ever been to. Like, what do I want to say? They're just simply not popular enough for any software producer to go out there and try to figure it out. That's when you kind of rely on crowdsourcing to make it and make a pretty decent model. Like, hey, it looks close enough. And then I put it in Sim and it's like, yeah, this feels pretty good. Like it may not be perfect, but well, damn, that's pit race, So that's where to me, that's where the different software comes in. Like, and that's just from the track modeling perspective. There's other things to talk about, but to me, I go to iRacing first. If the track that one of my customers is looking for is not there, and I have like SRO customers that will call me and say, hey, we're getting ready to go here, and this track isn't on iRacing. What do I do? And we get with them in Assetto Corsa or rFactor, and we download the track. We help them set it all up, and then they go out there and they run laps on the track in those other software programs.
Okay. Yeah, iRacing does a lot of intricate stuff. The track has to be prepped to a certain level before they can even scan. Everybody knows I have a terrible commute, so I listen to the Dale Jr. podcast all the time. And they talked about the North Wilkesboro scan and what they had to do. and it was nowhere near ready to be scanned when they first, like when the iRacing rep was like, yeah, he showed up and was like, we'll scan it. But he was like, you got to get rid of all of this and all of that. And apparently they all brought all their tractors and crew chipped in, and they spent like a long weekend at North Wilkesboro cleaning it up just so they could get it scanned into iRacing. So, you know, I was surprised at the party that Summit Point was there. You know, it's not a pro track. It's more of a vintage-ish track, right? Back in the day, the pros of the time raced there, but it's not a pro level track. So it's just different. It to me, I understand that, oh, well, they probably scanned Summit Point because you have such a amateur contingent that goes there. You have Mars and the SCCA and NASA. Everybody is there, right? So they have a high likelihood of selling, you know, software because of that track now. But the fact Pit Race isn't there, sort of weird. But maybe it's just my small amateur racing.
Man, I would agree that it's just amateurs at Summit Point because, you know, Paul Newman and Tom Cruise used to race there. So just total freaking amateurs. Like, what do they know? You know, just freaking Hollywood people show up. It is really interesting, actually. Like, why is Summit Point on there? It is better than that. Summit Point is one of the default tracks that you don't have to license.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
I think what it all comes down to is like, I am the center of the universe because Summit Point is the track that I learned to drive on, and it was free on iRacing and it's a default track. So I think it's all about me. If you really
Zach made it happen.
Yeah. It's not that I had total control over it, but it was me.
Okay. He's humble, ladies and gentlemen. Humble. So, let's get into some tips for learning, becoming faster, or how we can translate sim racing into our real live race cars, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think we hit a lot of it actually already. You know, to me, because I've always been a driver, sim racing has always been a lot of fun, and that's why I've done it. Just like when you were doing Gran Turismo back in the day, and I was doing Gran Turismo back in the day, we were doing it because it was a lot of fun. But the physics were all there, and so it really is a tool. And the trick is figuring out how to make sure you're using it as a tool that will benefit you. I think about, I'm not a golfer or anything like that, but I know my dad did a bunch of golf, and one of the things he's always told me is if you're ever going to go golfing, you better take lessons, because if you do it without lessons, you're just going to learn how to do it wrong on your own.
Yep.
And so I think about that with sim racing. Like, are you going to learn bad habits in sim racing if you're doing it wrong? And I think that is a risk. I think if you are already a driver and you're already doing a lot of track time, so you're coming to sim racing from that angle that, hey, I'm already a driver, I'm going to try to use this as a tool, then you're probably in pretty good shape, because you know what makes sense and you don't know what doesn't make sense, and you're really relying on your instincts as a actual driver to perform in the sim. If you have only learned how to do driving on a track in the sim, you've probably developed habits that actually translate to being fast on the simulator, but are bad ideas in the real world, or don't even exist. They don't work in the real world, right? So, you know, take sim racing as a training tool with a grain of salt, and just appreciate that it is not a perfect tool, but it's a great one. And use it with that in mind to the best of its ability to help you get better in the real world. Because I think anybody that's listening to your podcast is a track person that is wondering, can I use this to get better on track? Can I take a tenth off? Can I take a half a second off? Is that going to happen? Right?
Right.
So, yeah, I think it is possible. And so much so that the industry in like SRO, IMSA, that kind of level, I've learned recently that there are team owners that are telling their drivers, you need to go get 2 hours of sim time a week because it costs us whatever, $500 a lap to operate this car,
Right.
right? Depending on what it is. And that's a lot of money. But I need you to get more seat time. And simulators are that good now. And so I've got some people that I'm working with now that are using our simulators. They even just come to the shop and rent time to get more seat time because it counts. So if you think about that, like, does a sim make you faster? Well, if seat time makes you faster, which I think we all can agree that it does, and if simulators count for seat time, so much so that at the professional level, it's being dictated to drivers that you have to get simulator time, then yes, it does.
Yep.
So make sure you use it as a tool. We talked about finding a car or some combo that feels most comfortable to you. So if you're trying to learn like your car and how it behaves, and you want to push the envelope in your car, but you want to do it at the lowest risk possible, you can do that in the sim, right? So for example, my car, my LSE30 is just a freaking handful. And I want to get to the point to where I'm closer to that, past into the slip angle of the tires, which is a really risky zone to be in. It's really tough to stay there. You either go too far and you're hanging it out, or you're not far enough and you're underdriving in the corner. Like, how do you get in there and know what it feels like and stay there without overdoing it, underdoing it? Overdoing it in the real world means you might wreck the car. And so it's really hard to practice that. But so you tend to underdrive, right? Or you just like way hanging out and it looks cool, but you're going slow, whatever. But you can get in the sim and you can really push that envelope over and over and over again, get more and more laps at no cost other than the entry to buy in, and get to that limit and just kind of feel it out. And it's all, what you'll get out of it is there's no seat of the pants feel, which is really important, but it's not there. It's just the way it is. It's about visual cues. It's about wheel management. If you get into a tank slapper situation, you're going into full opposite lock. But the reality is, when you're in a slip angle situation, you need to have some opposite lock, but you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to oversave the car. You know what I'm talking about? Like when like, how do you negotiate that edge of the traction circle where you're doing just enough to stay there, but not so much that you exit it in the wrong way or exit it in the slow way where you totally control the car. You can play around with that in the simulator. So just how do you use it as a tool? How to improve your sim racing so it applies to the track? Time. Just time over and over and over again. And it's free once you've bought in, right? You've already paid for it. And if you wreck it, do it over again. I think that's the benefit. And I've got some circle track customers that they race every weekend, just like I used to. And they still want a simulator because once a weekend's not enough. And they're afraid that their competition is doing it every day on a simulator and they're going to be better than them. So they get a simulator and they get on it every night for track time.
Oh, yeah.
So it's all about it's all about your dedication. What is your level of dedication? If it is so much that the track time that you get, which, if you're with NASA, we're out there once a month. If you do a couple other clubs, you might be out there twice a month. If that's not enough for you and you think you can do better, if you know that your competition is only going out there once a month and you can get more track time with a sim and you could do better and do better than them by getting that extra track time, it could really be a tool. It might be something that would help you, but you got to use it with intent. If you get in there and you just screw around and you have fun, that's great. And that kind of counts too, but try to set yourself up on a program, just like you would if you were exercising.
You talked about doing scenarios, like where you're going to start, how you set up your AI, that type of thing. I think that could be a whole podcast by itself, talking about how to set up scenarios in your sim to give yourself that program, that right. learning program, especially if you're focusing on racecraft. But in general, traffic management, those types of things, you could, the world's your oyster as far as I'm concerned from what you've been That's talking right. about. So awesome. I think that's going to do it for this podcast. Where can people find you and SimSeats?
Okay, I don't want anybody to find me. Number one, I'm currently in hiding. It has to do with the IRS.
Okay, he's in witness protection.
Yeah,
witness protection.
You can find me personally on Instagram, TrackZach33. If you're looking for SimSeats, which is way more important than me, you can find us on the web, sim-seats.com. You can find us on Instagram, sim.seats.com. We had a little transposition there. It turned into a dot. I don't know. Can't help you. You can also find us on Twitter. We're on at SimSeats on Twitter. Of course, you can always go to your favorite search engine and just type SimSeats and we'll come up. Our website has a lot of information, all of our products on there. And then whatever you buy funds me, which is great. And
that's how businesses work.
And actually, not really. That's not so much. I have a team of a lot of really hardworking guys, about 4 guys that are full-time. We got several guys that are part-time. We do a lot of events around the country. Great group of guys. Everything that we do is handmade in the U.S. And let me tell you, that is not a hard business to run, but it does make a nice product. So that's what we're all about. Nobody's driving Ferraris around here, but we are making nice products.
It's got a bunch of clapped out BMWs behind him. That's all.
I literally have a broken.
Well, not clapped out. There's
sitting next to me.
They're all shiny though. There's an E30 and then some. Was that your E92?
So that's the E92 right there. I've got an E30 wagon. My E30 Touring is back there. So, I got my share of toys. Sit here and I polish them.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
Well, when you can't race them, and you've been doing sim racing all day at work, work in quotation marks, you got to do something else with your time, right?
That's exactly.
Keep them pretty,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
All right, Zach. That's a wrap, buddy. You're always welcome to come on the show. If you want to dive into another topic even deeper, or there's some big change in the industry that we need to get out there to folks, something that'll really change how we train on sims, feel free to come on.
Well, I say we look out for listener comments to see what they're looking for that they didn't hear, and then maybe we can deep dive into that later.
Awesome. That'll be great. Thanks for coming on.
All right, buddy. Talk to you later.
Until next time, keep working on yourself, keep working on the car, and let's get faster.